Hey guys, welcome to Brotherland. I actually wanted to shoot the video in the garden, but the weather is bad right now. So I'm doing it from inside. And as you might recognize, it's not about wheels today, but rather about a robotic mower. You have already seen many vacuum and mopping robots here, but robotic mowers are still a completely new species for me, and accordingly, I am still a bit inexperienced. But I took the plunge. I also invested in the Navimow and the thing cost around 900 back then, during the Prime days or something like that, instead of 1000. And there were also the off-road wheels included. But as mentioned, the MSRP is around 1000, so it's quite a chunk of money. But when you compare that with other vacuum and mowing robots, the premium models reach a similar level. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. I've included various jump markers so you can feel free to skip ahead, depending on what interests you. Maybe generally about the topic of accessories, the package is immensely large. You get a robot that is actually already finished, so you don't have to assemble anything. You have the charging station and some accessories along with the robot, and very importantly, the GPS antenna. The GPS antenna is important in this context, usually with older robotic mowers, where you had to lay wire in the garden so that the robot knows where it is allowed to go and where it is not allowed to go. In this case, it operates via GPS. The thing itself also has GPS, but it definitely needs the GPS antenna, which is connected to the base station to orient itself. It also has laser video in the front, or whatever, with which it can orient itself. But GPS is essentially crucial for it to return. Otherwise, regarding additional accessories that I don't have yet, there is also a GPS tracker that can be plugged in as a security feature. It basically runs through GPS, so to speak, to track the position, trigger an alarm if the thing moves away, and so on. It probably makes sense if you have a ranch like that, but I think if you have it in a regular garden, it's probably not that important. Otherwise, there is also a garage which I haven't purchased yet. You can cover your robot with it to increase the lifespan of the plastic a bit. I haven't bought that yet either. We are now at the end of September. I received the thing in July. So it has been in use for about 2 months and has been diligently mowing in our garden. The topic is installation. I am now quite used to several vacuum robots, and actually you can set these things up relatively quickly and easily. Accordingly, I assumed that it would be similar with the Navimow i105. But I have to say, I am really desperate. I have definitely struggled for hours doing troubleshooting. I was literally about to send the thing back because it drove me crazy, as you need GPS reception to set it up properly. And if you live in an area where you generally have poor GPS reception, then that could be a criterion for you regarding the Navimow i. In the end, I somehow managed to do it, because you have to make sure that your charging station requires power, and at the same time, the GPS antenna must be connected to this charging station via a cable. And of course, you can't just place it in the middle of the garden because you somehow have to lay down cables. So I fiddled around a bit, and in the end, I found a position near my outlet and was able to align the GPS antenna enough to get a signal, allowing me to set the thing up. If you have GPS reception, then everything is set up in just a few minutes. However, getting everything to run smoothly can sometimes be a bit tricky. As for the app, it's relatively simple. After you have installed the thing, you can see what the map looks like. You can see that here with me, for example. This is what I have tracked and where I have essentially let the robot cover the distance. This is very important. So it's not like with a vacuum robot where you say, go ahead, map everything, and then come back. No, you have to drive the thing around to precisely define where it is allowed to go and where it is not allowed to go. It also has a semi-automatic feature that allows it to hang along the curb. This actually works as long as there isn't something sticking up or similar. But you need to assess, you really have to cover everything where you need to go. And you might also see here in the app that there is a no-go zone, which you also need to cover. So you can't just draw a line here like with vacuum robots or say, please don't go to this area. No, it still has to cover the area to know where it can go and where it cannot go. Otherwise, the app is relatively basic. You can manage maps here. You can see it here again. Bluetooth connection lost. It somehow always needs Bluetooth. You can set plans and so on. It's relatively rudimentary, quite different from what you might be used to with vacuum robots, but it's enough. What I have basically done in everyday life is map the area. You can also map multiple areas and then set when it should go to which area, how long it should drive around there, and so on. Additionally, if it rains, it recognizes that, for example, also it doesn't start, for example, because wet grass is always bad. As for what else you can set on the robot itself, there are buttons and a display that also shows the battery status and such. But most of the buttons are mainly for unlocking in case there was an error message, or to manually let the thing continue moving or reverse. There is a rotary switch at the top that allows you to adjust the height of the cutting blades, because essentially, on the underside, you have a round platform where 3 cutting blades are fixed, and they then cut the grass. So you don't have a roller or anything like that. And with this, you can basically set whether you want it to be very high or very low. I set it to 4 and it was quite low to the ground in some places. So if the lawn or the ground is a bit uneven, it can be very close to the ground. So you just need to check what your conditions are. 2001. But if you let the thing run every day, then you can easily set it to 5 or 6. Then M is relatively high. But because you do this every day, it's not that dramatic. What might be much more interesting now, however, I think I live in a scenario that is probably the worst case for robotic mowers. Nothing is straight here. They have a tendency to have kids constantly throwing random stuff into the garden, which would normally kill any robotic mower. You know how it is with strings, toys, and so on. And yes, maybe, you can see it here. I have the outdoor wheels, and I installed them relatively quickly. It was quite fast and uncomplicated. You then have a bit more spikes, which gives it a bit more traction when it needs to go up steep inclines or something like that. And this is important if you really have steeper areas or if they might be a bit wetter where it has a bit of trouble. It has the disadvantage that by now these things are relatively often stuck in mud or slime. You can see that you have to somehow scrape the tires free or something like that. This has been the case over the last 2 months. As I said, we are now in September, not in November. I had to do this repeatedly because it was quite damp on those days. Since I have the things on, I was also able to manage my slope again. However, I didn't let the robot mow the entire slope because there's a problem. If it's too steep, the robot can tip over since the back is quite heavy and the front is relatively light. And when you drive it up, it can fall over and then cries for help. What else have I experienced in my daily life? There were days when it worked very smoothly, and by the end of the day you could really see a nice mowing pattern in the lawn. I was very surprised by that. Even my children and my wife noticed it. This only works if you have really flat areas without obstacles, where it doesn't have to navigate around, because when there are obstacles it sometimes moves around a bit confused, but it remembers where it has traveled. You can also see on the map where it has gone, and it really tries to mow 100% of the lawn that you have marked. And when it takes a break, it goes back and then continues until the entire lawn is mowed, and the mowing process is complete. How does it handle curbs, obstacles, and where it definitely has problems? If there are any depressions or holes, it sometimes gets stuck and cannot move forward. He regularly managed to get up onto the curbs with me and then scream for help. Sometimes it lost its orientation so much that it actually jumped right into the flower bed and ended up there at some point. The worst case I had was when I wasn't home. My wife told me about it. He somehow managed to go from the lawn onto the sidewalk, which is basically at our entrance, and then onto the street, and I think he was so confused that he drove around across the street. So, you should pay attention to this. If you don't have a fenced garden or something similar, you might want to place 1 or 2 obstacles there. I then placed a small little pylon here and it didn't remove it either, but I was a bit startled. Unfortunately, I have no recording of it. I only see my daughter walking up the street from our front door to collect the robot again. But that's still a bit tricky, and as I said, it's not at the quality you might expect from your robotic mowers. Robotic mowers are compared to your vacuum robots, which can really navigate around obstacles better and then find their way back. It has been a bit frustrating at times. Otherwise, in terms of cleaning, I didn't have to do much. The mower blades were actually always clean. After a certain period, you probably need to sharpen or replace the mower blades or something like that. The tires especially the front tire and the smaller tires, tend to collect grass relatively quickly, which sometimes needs to be removed. However, when the grass is dry, it can actually be pulled off easily with one hand. Recently, I had the situation where a cord got tangled again. It was somehow wrapped around the wheels and the blade. It was a huge mess. Strings are also a problem for robotic mowers, so you should always make sure that your lawn is relatively clean. So 2 months have passed now, and I'm not completely convinced, but I will definitely give it another chance next year. I'm basically going to let it run until the end of October. When autumn comes, I will take the thing apart, clean it once, and put it in the garage, and then I will probably start again slowly in March. When it runs, I have to say it really saves time, especially when you have a large lawn with many corners and edges. You still have to do some touch-up mowing because it can't handle that on its own. I still have my i105E hand mower, which I use for 1 or 2 spots, but then I spend about an hour mowing the lawn around the house, down to, I don't know, 5 minutes when I'm just doing a few corners. And that is already a time saver, and I must also say that the lawn appreciates it when you mow a little bit regularly. It grows nicely and becomes dense. It is said that one should mow frequently, but not too deeply. Rather, one should mow high to stimulate the lawn. And I have to say, for that, the thing is really good. And as I said, if you really have a square, simple lawn, then the thing does its job, its rounds, and you don't have to worry about it getting lost or anything like that. But U-Sand, as mentioned, always keep in mind that this is not like the modern robotic mowers with laser obstacle detection, Aki recognition and such. This is still, I would say, comparatively rudimentary. Yes, if you have any questions about the Navimow i, feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I am curious to see if I will get to test other robotic mowers soon. But for now, I'm done with this. Wishing you all a nice day. Take care. Ciao, ciao.